Panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. That's all I can feel, all I can process as I bolt through the thick, snow-covered underbrush of the forest. My breath comes in ragged gasps, white puffs of air bursting from my lips into the frigid night. The snow, illuminated only by the faint moonlight, crunches beneath my frantic steps, a relentless rhythm in the otherwise deathly quiet woods. I don't dare to look back. I can't. The fear of what's behind me, that thing, it's too overwhelming. Its presence looms like a shadow over my shoulder, a constant, terrifying reminder that it's there, just out of sight. I can hear it though, oh God, I can hear it. The crunch of snow under its weight, the occasional snap of a twig, and a guttural growl that seems to vibrate through the very air. My heart hammers against my ribcage, threatening to burst. I stumble over a hidden root, catching myself just before I faceplant into the snow. I can't fall. I can't even slow down. It's getting closer. I know it. I can feel it in my bones. I've never run like this before. It's as if my life depends on each desperate stride, each labored breath. The cold air burns my lungs, but I welcome the pain. It's a reminder that I'm still alive, still fighting for every second. The woods are a maze in the darkness, and I'm just praying I'm not running deeper into its clutches. My mind races, trying to remember the layout of the forest, but fear has muddled my thoughts. Every tree looks the same under the moon's pale gaze. Every shadow a potential hiding spot for that thing. Suddenly, a glimmer of hope, a light in the distance. It's faint, but it's there. Salvation? Maybe. I push my exhausted body towards it, driven by hope and sheer terror. The light grows brighter, and the outline of a cabin materializes through the trees. It's old, the wood weathered and the windows dark. But it's shelter, a barrier between me and the nightmare behind me. I practically throw myself at the door, fumbling with the handle. It's unlocked. Thank God it's unlocked. I tumble inside, slamming the door shut behind me. My whole body shakes as I lean against it, listening for any sign of pursuit. Outside, a guttural wail pierces the night, a sound so full of rage and hunger that it chills me to my core. It's close. Too close. But for now, I'm out of its reach. I slide to the floor, my back still pressed against the door, and let out a shaky breath. I'm safe. For the moment. But for how long? In the eerie silence of the cabin, a dreadful realization hits me. I'm covered in blood. Not all of it is mine. What happened out there, in the snowy woods, is a blur of terror and confusion. But one thing is clear. I can't stay here forever. I need to warn others, tell them what's lurking in these woods. My trembling hands find a pen and a scrap of paper on a dusty table. I start to write, the words a frantic stream of thought. Maybe someone will find this. Maybe they'll understand the horror that's out here, waiting in the shadows. The Wendigo's wail still echoes in my ears as I write, a haunting reminder that the nightmare is far from over. With my heart still thundering in my chest, I sit hunched over the old wooden table, the dim light of a single flickering candle casting long shadows across the room. The pen in my hand trembles as I try to gather my thoughts, try to piece together the events that led to this night of unspeakable terror. I think back to the days leading up to this nightmare. It started out like any other day in our small, forgotten town, nestled between the embrace of looming mountains and dense, sprawling forests, a town where everyone knows your name, and the pace of life is as slow as the changing seasons. I remember the crisp morning air, the kind that makes you feel alive, and the way the leaves rustled underfoot as I walked through the town. But even then, there were signs, subtle but unnerving, that something was amiss. It began with the wildlife, deer found mutilated in the woods, their bodies torn apart with a ferocity that no known animal in our region could muster. The locals whispered about bears, maybe a pack of wolves, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. It was too brutal, too deliberate. Then, people started disappearing. First, it was Old Man Jenkins, the reclusive fellow who lived on the outskirts of town. His door was found ajar one morning, breakfast still on the table, his dog whining pitifully on the porch. After that, it was the Miller twins, vanishing without a trace during one of their hikes. I remember the night it all changed for me, the night I first heard it. I remember walking through the town, the crisp winter air biting at my cheeks, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the buildings. The local diner, usually abuzz with laughter and chatter, was subdued, its patrons casting wary glances out of fogged-up windows, the street lamps casting a weak glow against the thickening fog. That's when I heard the sound. A distant, mournful howl that seemed to roll down from the mountains and echo through the valley. It was unlike any animal I'd ever heard, filled with a hunger and a sadness that made my blood run cold. In my quest for answers, I found myself drawn to the heart of our town, the old library. It was there, amidst the musty scent of aged paper and the quiet rustle of turning pages, that I discovered the tales of old. My fingers traced the lines of text in an ancient, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with time. Stories of the Wendigo, a creature of legend, a spirit of the forest, born from darkness and despair. The lore spoke of a beast that was once human, transformed by a curse born of unspeakable acts. A creature trapped between worlds, its hunger insatiable, its form twisted and grotesque. It was said to move with the wind, a whisper in the shadows, its presence heralded by a chill that seeped into one's very bones. As I delved deeper into the mythology, a sense of dread settled over me. The descriptions of the Wendigo, its elongated limbs, its gaunt frame, its eyes like hollow pits of despair. Could such a creature truly exist? Was it possible that the legends were more than just stories? I pored over old folk tales and legends, each story adding another piece to the puzzle. The Wendigo was more than a myth. It was a harbinger of doom, born from the darkest human deeds, a creature of revenge and endless hunger. But one chilling account stood out, a long-forgotten winter, many generations ago, so harsh and bleak that it pushed a man beyond the brink of sanity. From his actions, born of desperation and madness, the Wendigo was said to have risen, a manifestation of his cursed soul. Leaving the library, the words echoed hauntingly in my mind. The streets were deserted, the usual evening bustle conspicuously absent. My footsteps felt loud, intrusive, as I made my way home. The weight of the book in my backpack a constant reminder of the chilling tales it contained. The weight of our town's hidden past pressed down on me. This creature. It was a part of our history, a dark legacy that we had unknowingly inherited. As I walked home under a blanket of stars on that fateful day, I felt a pull, an inexplicable urge to venture into the forest. It loomed beside me, a silent, watchful guardian. In its shadows, I sensed the presence of the Wendigo. That night, as I lay in bed, the wind howled outside, a mournful, haunting sound that seemed to carry with it the cries of the lost. I tossed and turned, unable to find sleep, my mind replaying the stories I had read, each detail etching itself into my consciousness. I had to know the truth. I told myself I was just looking for answers, that I needed to understand what was happening, but deep down, I think I already knew. The dead of night had enveloped the town, a cloak of unnerving silence that seems heavier than usual. The moon, a pale specter in the cloud-streaked sky, cast an eerie glow over the snow-blanketed streets. My footsteps were muffled, the only sound in the otherwise deathly quiet night as I made my way to the edge of the forest. The trees stood like dark sentinels at the border of our world and theirs, their branches swaying ever so slightly in the frigid breeze. There was a primal fear that gripped me as I gazed into the forest, a deep, instinctual warning that something ancient and malevolent lurked within. I paused at the threshold, my breath visible in the cold air, my heart pounding. As I stepped into the forest, the crunch of snow underfoot seemed deafeningly loud. The trees closed in around me, their gnarled branches like twisted fingers reaching out in the dim light. The deeper I venture, the more the forest seemed to change. The air grew colder, the silence more profound, as if the very woods were holding their breath. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes following my every move. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a jolt of fear through me. The forest felt alive, aware, and not at all welcoming. I didn't realize how far I'd gone until I come across a clearing, the moonlight casting long, ominous shadows across the snow. It was here that I found them. Tracks, large and irregular, leading deeper into the woods. They were unlike any animal tracks I've ever seen, too large to belong to any creature known to roam these parts. As I followed the tracks, a sense of dread settled over me. The forest seemed to grow darker, the trees more menacing. That's when I saw it. A glimpse of something moving between the trees, fast and silent. I felt its eyes on me, felt the primal fear that rooted me to the spot. I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins. The sound it began to make, otherworldly, filled with hunger and rage. It was the Wendigo, I was sure of it. And then it charged. What have we awakened in those woods? What have I seen with my own eyes? In a panic, I turned to run, but the snow hampered my movements, my feet sinking deep with each frantic step. I could hear it behind me, the sound of heavy footsteps crunching through the snow, getting closer and closer. I glanced back, and for a brief, horrifying moment, I saw it. A towering figure, its form obscured by the darkness, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. It was gaining on me. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning, my legs aching. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, the trees an endless maze that I couldn't seem to escape. I could feel the creature's hot breath on my neck, hear its ragged breathing as it closed in. And then the cabin. The flickering candle casts a quivering light, its dance on the walls mirroring the turmoil within me. I leaned back, my body aching, my mind racing. The quiet of the cabin weighs heavily, a contrast to the chaos that led me here. I close my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my breath, to find clarity amid the fear. Opening my eyes, I gaze out of the small, grimy window. The moon, a pale sentinel in the night sky, bathes the snowy landscape in a ghostly glow. The trees stand like silent witnesses, their bare branches reaching toward the heavens as if in prayer for the dawn to come. I stand up, moving away from the door, trying to convince myself that I'm safe, that the walls can protect me from the horrors of the night. But then, it starts. At first, it's a whisper. So faint I think I might have imagined it. A voice, soft and familiar, calling my name. I freeze, my blood turning cold. The voice grows louder, clearer. It's my mother's voice, but that's impossible. She passed away years ago, the sweet, comforting tone I remember so well now stopping me in my tracks. "Come outside, dear. It's just me," the voice coos, a sickening mimicry of maternal warmth. I back away from the window, my mind reeling. The Wendigo. It's playing with me, using the voices of my loved ones to lure me out. Another voice joins in, this one deeper, stronger. My best friend Michael, who moved away last year. "Hey, come on out! It's safe, I promise." The jovial tone, once a source of comfort, now feels like a noose tightening around my neck. I cover my ears, but the voices are inescapable, surrounding me, seeping into my very being. They're so real, so convincing. I can almost see their faces, smiling at me through the windows, beckoning me to join them. The voices multiply, a chorus of the living and the dead, each one a stab to my heart. My grandmother, my old school teacher, neighbors, friends. Some long gone, others still very much alive. Each voice is a twisted reminder of my deepest connections, perverted into tools of torment by the Wendigo. I sink to the floor, my hands still pressed against my ears, my eyes shut tight. The voices grow louder, more insistent. They plead, they beg, they demand. They promise safety, warmth, an end to the nightmare. But I know it's a lie, a cruel trick to draw me into the clutches of the beast. The psychological assault is relentless. The Wendigo, with its unnatural powers, weaves a tapestry of fear and despair, preying on my memories, my emotions. It's not just hunting my body. It's hunting my soul, seeking to break me, to drive me into its waiting jaws. Hours pass, or maybe it's just minutes. Time has lost all meaning in the face of such terror. Gradually, the voices begin to fade, receding into the night as the first light of dawn creeps over the horizon. I'm left alone, a trembling wreck on the floor, the echoes of the voices still ringing in my ears. The first light of dawn does little to dispel the terror of the night. As I rise from the floor, every muscle in my body aches, a physical manifestation of the psychological torment inflicted by the Wendigo. The house, once a sanctuary, now feels like a prison, walls echoing with the remnants of those haunting voices. I move through the cabin, my movements mechanical, driven by a need to feel something normal, something routine. But normalcy is a distant memory in this twisted reality. Then, it starts. A soft tapping, so light I almost dismiss it as my imagination. It comes from the window, a gentle, rhythmic knock. I freeze, my eyes fix on the window, but there's nothing there. Just the pale light of the morning filtering through the glass. The tapping grows louder, more insistent. It's joined by another, then another, until the knocks and taps are coming from all around me. The walls, the roof, the other windows. Each one is assaulted by a barrage of knocks, a symphony of terror orchestrated by the unseen horror outside. I cover my ears, but the sound is everywhere. It's as if the house itself is being pelted by invisible fists, each knock a blow to my fraying sanity. The noise builds to a crescendo, a relentless, maddening rhythm that fills the air and drowns out all thought. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stops. The silence that follows is suffocating, a heavy, oppressive void that seems to press down on me from all sides. I stand in the middle of the room, my heart pounding in my chest, my breaths shallow and ragged. The absence of sound is more terrifying than the cacophony of knocks, a pregnant pause that stretches on for what feels like an eternity. In that dead silence, a whisper, so close it feels like it's inside my head. "I'm coming for you." The words are a chilling caress, a promise of horrors yet to come. I spin around, but there's no one there. Just the empty room and the haunting echo of that whisper. Before I can process the words, a deafening bang rattles the front door, shaking the house to its foundations. I jump, a scream catching in my throat, my heart racing with renewed fear. With trembling hands, I approach the door. The banging has ceased, replaced once again by that oppressive silence. I reach for the doorknob, hesitating for a moment before turning it slowly. The door swings open, and there, on the doorstep, is the eviscerated carcass of an animal, its innards splayed out in a grotesque display. Blood pools around it, seeping into the cracks of the wooden porch. My stomach churns at the sight, bile rising in my throat. The message is clear. This is a warning, a sign of the Wendigo's power and its intent. It's toying with me, demonstrating that it can reach me, even in the perceived safety. I close the door, my mind racing. The Wendigo is more than just a creature of the night. It's a being of unimaginable malice, capable of terror beyond comprehension. And as I stand there, the image of the mutilated animal burned into my mind, I realize that this nightmare is far from over. The aftermath of the morning's gruesome discovery leaves an indelible mark on my psyche. I make my way home, but as I cautiously moved through my day, each creak of the old wooden floorboards, each whisper of the wind against the windows sets my nerves on edge. I find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting to see the Wendigo's grotesque form materializing from the shadows. But there is nothing. Only the oppressive sense of being watched, hunted. I try to focus on routine chores, attempting to distract my mind from the horror that has befallen me. Yet even the simplest tasks are fraught with an undercurrent of fear. The clink of dishes as I wash them seems too loud, the shadows cast by the hanging pots too deep and sinister. As evening approaches, the house takes on a different character. The setting sun casts long, slanting shadows across the rooms, turning familiar spaces into realms of uncertainty and dread. I catch glimpses of movement from the corner of my eye, but when I turn to look, there's nothing there. Just the play of light and shadow. The wind picks up outside, its mournful howl reminiscent of the Wendigo's cries. It seems to carry voices with it, whispers that are almost intelligible, but not quite. I strain to listen, but the words are elusive, dancing just beyond the edge of comprehension. Is it the Wendigo, or just my imagination running wild? Night falls, and with it comes a sense of isolation. I sit in the dimly lit living room, the flickering of the television screen providing a feeble attempt at normalcy. The news speaks of mundane, everyday events, an escape of the nightmare that has become my reality. As I head to bed, a sense of unease follows me, clinging like a cold mist. Lying in the dark, the silence of the house feels oppressive, heavy with unspoken threats. Every creak, every sigh of the wind seems laden with meaning, a subtle indication of something sinister just out of sight. I drift into a restless sleep, plagued by dreams that are more impressions than narratives. Shadows that move with purpose, a feeling of being pursued, the sense of a presence just beyond the veil of my subconscious. I awake with a start in the early hours of the morning, the remnants of the dream clinging to my mind. The room is still, the darkness almost tangible. And then, so faint I'm not sure I really hear it, a soft scratching sound, like fingernails on the outside wall. I hold my breath, listening intently, but the sound doesn't repeat. The night wears on, the darkness an unyielding shroud. As dawn approaches, the first light of morning brings little relief. The subtle horrors of the night, real or imagined, have left their mark. A constant reminder that the Wendigo is out there, biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The relentless terror of the past days leaves me frayed and exhausted, a shadow of my former self. Desperation drives me to seek help, to not face this nightmare alone any longer. Hesitantly, I reach out to my closest friends. Sarah, a steadfast presence in my life. Tom, whose skepticism often balanced my more impulsive nature. And Lucas, who's been a close friend of mine for years, helping me through all of my struggles. We gather in my living room, the morning light doing little to dispel the heavy air of dread that hangs over the house. I recount the horrors I've endured, the voices, the visions, the Wendigo's relentless pursuit. Sarah listens with a furrowed brow, her usual calm demeanor shaken by the gravity of my words. Tom shifts uncomfortably, his rational mind struggling to accept the unbelievable tale. As I speak, tension builds in the room. It's as if my recounting has invited the presence of the Wendigo into my home, an unseen specter looming over us. Sarah glances nervously at the windows, while Tom tries to mask his growing unease with a veneer of skepticism. The day progresses, and we plan our next steps, discussing ways to protect ourselves, to gather evidence of the Wendigo's existence. We're interrupted by a sudden, chilling gust of wind that rattles the windows, sending a shiver down our spines. It's as if the forest itself is responding to our defiance. As night falls, the atmosphere becomes more oppressive. We hear it first, a faint whispering, almost like leaves rustling, but with a cadence that suggests speech. Sarah jumps at the sound, her eyes wide with fear. Tom, though visibly shaken, tries to rationalize it as the wind playing tricks. Lucas remains strong for the group, though his face is filled with a thick tension. But the whispers grow louder, more insistent. They're not just my mother's voice now, but a chorus of the familiar. Loved ones, friends, even voices of the living, distorted and unnatural. We realize, with mounting horror, that the Wendigo is not just targeting me anymore. It's reaching out to all of us. The evening descends into a series of unexplainable occurrences. Objects move of their own accord, shadows flicker at the edge of our vision, and the temperature drops inexplicably in certain rooms. Tom has no explanations now. his face pale and drawn. We huddle together, trying to find solace in each other's company. But the sense of isolation is overwhelming. The Wendigo has us in its sights, its malevolent presence encircling the house, a predator toying with its prey. Throughout the night, the subtle horrors escalate. A tap on the window here, a soft thud against the wall there. Each sound sets our hearts racing, a constant reminder that we're not safe, not even within these walls. As dawn approaches, we're left exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. The night's events have taken their toll, leaving us on edge, jumping at the slightest sound. The realization hits us hard. We're dealing with something beyond our understanding. A force that's not just physical, but psychological, capable of invading our minds and breaking our spirits. The day dawns, cloaked in a silence so profound it feels like a harbinger of doom. We, the remaining four, myself, Sarah, Tom, and Lucas, sit in my living room, the air filled with unsaid fears. Our movements are slow, weighed down by the terror that has seeped into our bones. There's a sense of impending doom that we can't shake off, as if we're on the precipice of an abyss. As the hours drag on, the house feels increasingly claustrophobic, a cage rather than a shelter. The outside world is shrouded in a dense fog, a white blanket that blurs the line between reality and nightmare. It's in this ghostly haze that Lucas, driven by a restless anxiety, decides to step outside. We protest feebly, our voices hollow, but he's adamant, promising to return shortly. His silhouette vanishes into the mist, leaving us in an even deeper silence. Time stretches, each minute an eternity. The fog presses against the windows, a barrier that isolates us from the rest of the world. We call out to Lucas, but our voices are swallowed by the fog, leaving us with a chilling sense of helplessness. Then, a scream. Not just a sound, but a physical entity that rips through the silence. It's Lucas's voice, raw with terror, emanating from somewhere near the forest edge. We rush out, our hearts pounding, the cold air biting at our skin. The world outside is a monochrome landscape, the trees mere shadows. We find him at the edge of the woods. The sight that greets us is something out of a primal nightmare. Lucas lies on the ground, his body torn open, the snow around him stained crimson. Parts of him are missing, as if savagely eaten. His eyes stare emptily at the gray sky, frozen in a final expression of horror. The grief hits us like a wave, overwhelming and suffocating. Sarah collapses to the ground, her cries muffled by her hands. Tom stands still, his face a mask of shock, his eyes fixed on the horrific scene. I feel a numbing terror taking hold, a paralyzing realization of our vulnerability. We attempt to call the police, the hospital, the fire department, anyone who could help us in our situation, but our calls won't go through. Our signal is strong, but nothing can be sent out, as if something is blocking us from reaching the outside world. We run to check our cars in a desperate attempt to escape the house, to escape the Wendigo, but the vehicles have been ripped apart. We raced back to where our friend now lay, and decided as a group that we couldn't just leave him there. Dragging Lucas's mutilated body back to the house feels like a descent into madness. Our actions are mechanical, automatic, as if we're moving through a fog of disbelief. Inside, we lay his remains on the floor, covering him with a blanket, a feeble attempt to afford some dignity to his corpse. The day passes in a blur of shock and mourning. We speak in whispers, our voices tinged with fear and sorrow. Memories of Lucas intermingle with a growing realization of our dire situation. The loss is a tangible presence in the room, a suffocating blanket of despair. As night envelops the world outside, our terror mounts. The Wendigo, having claimed one of us, feels closer than ever. Its presence lurks just beyond the walls, an unseen predator playing a macabre game of cat and mouse. We huddle together, our shared grief a small comfort against the encroaching darkness. The loss of Lucas has stripped away any illusions of safety. We are prey, and the Wendigo is the merciless hunter. And as we brace for another night, the dread of what might come is almost unbearable. The Wendigo is out there, in the fog, in the darkness, waiting. Its next move is a whisper in the wind, a shadow in the night, a terror that grips our hearts. And we know, with a certainty that chills our souls, that the nightmare is far from over.